Good morning and welcome everybody here in the room. Also, I gather we have quite a few attendants virtually. It's great to see so many colleagues and friends who have gathered here to join us in today's event, which is called Global Water Futures, Anticipation and Innovation. And it is in celebration of World Water Day and, very importantly for us here, the launch of the Water Institute, a new entity within the Julia and Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory. The significance of a water institute in a region known for its unique and urgent water challenges cannot be understated. More broadly, if we are looking at the world, we see extremes all around us. Just looking at past years, we had floods, droughts, wildfires, encountered locally and around the globe. And they are becoming not the exception anymore, they are almost the norm at this point. And looking at that, it is of course important to understand the role of the hydrosphere and its intimate links to other critical parts of the Earth system, including climate, food, public health, or human well-being more generally, to understand where we are heading on our planet. To bring the point home, just for us here locally, many of us remember that last year we had 31 consecutive days with temperatures above 110 Fahrenheit. Now, for those of you who like to think in Celsius, that's 43.3 Celsius. That is hot. I mean, typically, if you go above 40, you start to feel literally the heat. So looking at that shows why we have to act concisely, but also urgently. We often are looking at these things and we are still contemplating for way too long, rather than recognizing the urgency of the moment that we are in. And the Water Institute is designed to understand these challenges better from their fundamental characteristics, but more importantly, to provide scientifically based support for the critical decisions that have to be made to assure access to sufficient safe water on local and global scales. Water is not just a precious resource, it's a fundamental human right and the source of life itself. After all, we live on the so-called water planet. Water sustains ecosystems, nourishes crops, drives our economies, and supports the well-being of communities around the world. From the vast oceans that cover our planet, about 70% of the surface of the planet is actually oceans, to communities around the world, we are really relying on water. So as we celebrate World Water Day and the launch of the Water Institute, we are reminded again of the critical importance of this life-supporting and life-sustaining element that flows through every aspect of our life. To commemorate today's event, President Michael Crow, who would have loved to be here but is bound by other obligations, has prepared a short video message that will be played for all of you now. Maybe the now was not that accurate.
Hi,
but we'll get to
it. President of Arizona State University. It's really exciting that folks from ASU, from Columbia, and Rice have gotten together to look at how we can tackle some of these really quite not intractable, but semi-intractable water issues that are out there. And so, what I think is really needed in terms of global water challenges at the end of the day is it's all about enhancing decision-making with informed, structured models and mechanisms to help that decision-making to be implemented, but also to find ways to educate the broader decision community, the broader political community, the broader set of constituents of water so that they can be informed and participating in these kinds of decisions. It really is something that we've been working on for a long time at ASU through our decision theater, through various complex water projects that we've been moving forward with. And what we need to find a way, and I think the Columbia, Rice, ASU co-laboratory can really be this. where we need to stop being just, I don't know what to call it, other than small shops working on isolated challenges or problems. We need to start putting the kind of energy behind water and water solutions that are put behind every other important technology. Think of water as a technology. Think of water delivery as essential to all other technologies that we're advancing, including our species level success. What that means then is what we really need in all of this is to think about new ways to work together, to stop being isolated, to stop being only advancing academic papers of narrow interest, and that in addition to that, we're taking on the bigger, broader issues. That means then finding some projects that can be uniquely pursued by the three institutions together. And so what I'm hopeful of is that you can find ways to collaborate, you can find ways to focus on new kinds of things, you can help us in university management to find ways to be helpful to you, because as you know, it is a race. The race is against time, and the race is against time relative to us making the best decisions relative to water for the future. So good luck with the event. I look forward to your collaborative ideas and finding ways that we can work together. Thank you.
So you probably all have noticed by now that our audio is on the low side. That's not intentionally. There is a technical issue. I'm not sure that it will be fixed today, but I hope that at least you get the main messages across. And I'm sure that when Michael mentioned the three institutions, these were just examples of many more, and I'm sure that Manu will elaborate on how this will work. I would like now to introduce Dr. Sally Morton. Sally is the Executive Vice President of the Knowledge Enterprise and will deliver opening remarks. For those of you who are not at ASU, what does enterprise mean? We are actually structured along three enterprises: the academic, the knowledge, and the learning enterprise. So, being responsible for the knowledge enterprise, Sally oversees the university's research portfolio. She advances ASU's research priorities, oversees transdisciplinary institutes and initiatives, and drives corporate engagement and strategic partnerships, technology transfer, and international development. As you can see, her plate is not yet really full enough, but we are working on it. She's a professor in the College of Health Solutions and the School of Mathematical and Statistical Sciences, and holds the Florence Eli Nelson Chair. Sally is a strong supporter of everything we do here in GFL, including water. She's really a good friend in all the things that we take on, which our president often introduces as the unmanageable task of taking on these problems. But of course, he expects us to manage them, so just to be clear. So Sally will speak more about the role of the Water Institute, an entity that benefits from knowledge enterprises support, the same fashion as GFL as a whole. I would like to invite Sally to the podium.
Thank you, Peter. What a wonderful introduction. Always hard to follow President Crow, but I'll do my best. So thank you to everyone for joining us today on World Water Day. As you heard from Peter and also the President, the Southwest is facing very pressing water challenges, and the situation that we face here in Arizona is shared by millions around the world. So though we're focused regionally, this is really a global issue and a collaborative issue across the world. And ASU is working diligently to really protect Arizona's water resources. And one way we're doing this today is with the launch of the Water Institute. I think this will make immeasurable impact towards generating sustainable solutions for water resilience. And this institute really exemplifies our university's commitment, our entire university's commitment, though based here in GFL and partnered with entities like the Knowledge Enterprise. It's a commitment of all of ASU toward these very pressing issues. And as you heard, we're also doing it in partnership with many of you from outside ASU. So thank you for being here. Water Institute researchers will collaborate directly with academia, industry, government, nonprofit organizations, as well as the community, to really create a thriving research and innovation ecosystem to ensure a secure water future for all. And in particular, as you heard from the President and also Peter, and which I'm very excited about as a statistician who works in evidence-based decision-making, there will be a focus on enhanced understanding and decision-making at many different levels, from the policymaker to the community maker, policymaker and decision maker, as well to the individual. So I'm excited to see that as well. Strengthening water resilience while enhancing economic competitiveness, supporting high-value job creation, and developing, recruiting, and retaining the industries that work in this space is vital for the economy of our state, the well-being of our fellow citizens, and the future of the Southwest for generations to come. So as President Crow mentioned, it is a race against time. And we need you. We need your talents, your commitment. We need your energy and your passion. We need you. So thank you for being here and for contributing. And please welcome Peter back for more remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. And clearly, Manu and Sally will have an easy time to communicate because both of them are well versed in the language of statistics and mathematics. In fact, a little anecdote from our joint time at Columbia. When Manu went through the tenure process at Columbia, the members of the ad hoc committee, which at the time was still the way we ran our tenure procedures, all of a sudden somebody said, so when I presented the case, so just looking at this CV, he looks to me like a statistician. So what makes you believe that he will stay with hydrology? And I said, well, he did so far. I'm confident he will. But if he won't, statistics will have a great win. And so we left it there, and people were actually satisfied with that. So before introducing Manu, I just wanted to put the Water Institute and the water work a little bit into the larger context. So we're thinking about water, we have to really place it into the larger context of the Earth system. And if we're looking at the present situation, we are finding our planet struggling to meet the growing demands of a rapidly growing population on many fronts. This includes issues such as the energy system, climate, the food system, public health, and social dynamics as a whole. The water crisis is just one of many of these interconnected pressure points that we have placed on the life-supporting systems of our planet. So the impetus for launching the Water Institute, which is envisioned to be a center for scholarship and, importantly, action to provide options for addressing these emerging water crisis, the emerging water crisis, is to allow us to take a holistic view of the planet as a whole and to place our action in one or the other of these areas where we see pressure into the context of the overall system. Otherwise, we would really run the danger of solving a problem here while we are creating problems in many of the other subsystems. Given that challenge and that large task, there's no one better suited to lead this ambitious agenda than Manu Lall. He is presently a Global Futures Professor in the School of Complex Adaptive Systems within the College of Global Futures. Prior to joining ASU, which just happened in January this year, so a little bit more than 3 months ago, Manu was the Alan and Carol Silberstein Professor of Engineering at Columbia University and served as the director of the Columbia Water Center there, among other leadership positions. He developed a global water sustainability initiative, global flood initiative, America's Water Initiative. In 2017, he was named an American Geophysical Union Fellow, and in 2018, he was elected a Fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. His honors include the Arid Lands Hydrology and Wen T. Chow Awards from the American Society of Civil Engineers and the European Geosciences Union Henry Darcy Medal. He's also the editor-in-chief of Water Security, which is published by Elsevier. Before handing over to Manu, I just would like to thank today's features presenters and panelists. It's great to see so many, as I said before, so many friends and colleagues from the present and the past who have traveled here from California, Colorado, New York, Texas, and many other places to present on a range of topics that will be introduced by Manu that cover a broad range of issues related to water. The wide range of these topics featured here reminds us of the vastness and complexity of the water challenges that are occurring around the world today, and it becomes clear that this is not something any person, community, or nation can solve alone, and that already has been remarked upon by our President and by Sally. Designing and implementing swift, impactful solutions requires a concerted effort on the part of everyone. I now would like to invite Manu to the podium to give us his introductory remarks and his vision for today's event and for the Water Institute.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Peter. The most awkward thing a person goes through is getting introduced, so I think I'm still suffering from that, so let's see if we can get beyond that. First, I would like to welcome everyone to Arizona. I'm welcoming myself to Arizona still. And thank you for joining this initiative. We hope that we will do this as an experiment, a research experiment, where we are going to try to change the world. That's the simple ambition, and I mentioned that to some people the other day when they wanted to know what benchmarks I plan to achieve in the next few years. I don't have benchmarks. We just simply want to change the world. The reason it's so important to do that is, if you think about it, as Peter and Sally and Michael Crow said earlier, the foundation of life on this planet is water. It touches every aspect of human and ecological activity, and this is where the complexity in trying to do something about water comes, because if we want to move a delta in one direction, there's an epsilon in the other direction that becomes a constraint immediately. But we can get lost in that kind of a language, and we can get lost in thinking about all the challenges. And unfortunately, over the last 30 or 40 years, what I've seen is that as an academic community, we have become incredibly skilled at pointing out what the problems are and what the problems will be. We are not as skilled at stepping back and saying, we don't need to worry about the problems. What we want to worry about is what we want to look like as a community and as a planet in the next 10 or 20 years. The climate change story is very critical in this sense, because it's one example of a global process that has slowly and with contention gone somewhere. I would argue that with water, we have an opportunity not to be contentious, but to actually focus on solving things, because the politics is not of the same kind as it is with climate. Having said that, those two things are inseparable. Almost everyone now appreciates that droughts and floods are due to climate. So we want to understand climate as to how it impacts floods and droughts. I have a slightly different view of that. If you actually think about climate models, and when we try to do projections of climate, the biggest limiting factor that drives those models into the wrong place is the global hydrological cycle. This is the ocean part, the atmospheric part, and the land part. As long as we don't have that right, we are not going to get climate right. As long as we don't address solving the water problems, we are not going to focus on the right aspects of climate that we need to actually address. So those two things are inseparable. I can talk indefinitely on that, so I'll try to make sure that I don't do that. There is the human dimension, and We often call it the policy dimension. We often call it the picture of women who walk 20 miles to fetch water. We have so many examples that all of us are familiar with. So when you start looking at it from a solutions frame, we want to make sure that these people are not wiped out by floods. That wiping out, we have characterized historically as property loss and life loss. What we understand today in a globalized world is that it's not just that. It's the impact through supply chains and dramatic impacts across the world. We don't know how to solve those yet. We talk about virtual water trade. Michael will talk a bit about that later in the day. But what about the virtual water trade? When I talk to people who talk about that, they often talk about, here is the desert of Arizona and we are exporting water out somewhere. Think more about Israel, which is held as the paragon of water systems optimization and best ways to do things. Israel exports water through crops that are high-value crops. Guess what? It's an order of magnitude less water exported than imported into Israel. Israel would not be a water sustainable place if it was not basically importing all its food. So we have this globalized society and we have to understand what are the levers that actually govern that. Financial levers as well as production levers related to climate. If I think about it, in the 1960s when I was a kid, I was told that by the year 2000, the world would be bankrupt. We would not be able to sustain the population that was being projected to be 5 to 6 billion. We are at 8 billion today. We have crossed that threshold, and Peter was essentially referring to that. Let's think about what that means. We have actually managed to screw up some aspects of the planet, but we have achieved a population of 8 billion. We have had a technology globalization strategy that has gotten us there with some ills, but we have managed to get there. This is actually quite remarkable. We have not seen rats do this, although they live off of us. Coming from New York, I have to bring that up. So, the thing is that we have a society that has managed to figure out how to overcome many obstacles. Water emerges as one of those constraints now, which could reverberate through the rest of the economy and limit us. I totally think this is solvable. I think in the 21st century, if we solve water, we solve other things. How are we going to do that? When I refer to climate as a component of it, one of the thoughts that I have is that we managed to overcome climate historically by developing canals, by developing reservoirs, by developing other technologies, essentially control on land of what goes on. I think we are now at a point where we have to think about how we control climate adaptively as well. So we have a planet where we will be a very controlled planet. We have become much more controlled than we ever were before, and this trajectory will continue. Is this good or is this bad? Many people will argue that thinking about such things is bad. Sure. But they will happen. And what we have to make sure is that they happen in a good way and that we shepherd them. That's the larger scale. If I now come back to the scale of individual people and what goes on there, it's interesting. While I was at Columbia, we worked on in-field projects on every continent of the world. We worked with farmers, and we worked with governors and prime ministers and so on. What remains in my mind from that is you can do a lot of innovative work from the bottom up. It's needed. There's no doubt about it. That work doesn't sustain if the governments counteract that. And what we see routinely is that the governments counteract that. What we see is that the levers of change are much larger for governments than for NGOs. We have to tap those levers. We have been, as I said at the very beginning, been very good at raising the problems. We've been very good at telling the political establishment and the decision makers how complex water is. We need to change that. Solutions are binary, solutions are continuous, solutions are finite for each piece. We have to understand how to move those solutions forward and not whine about what the problems are. That's, I think, the culture that we want to build, and it builds on the culture that already exists at ASU, which is a big reason why I moved here. And the intention with the Water Institute is that this is a global water collaboratory. Several of you probably saw that 3 weeks ago we sent out a request for 5-minute videos, anticipation of the next 10 to 20 years of what the challenges are, what we need to solve. Innovation, how are you going to solve it? Who do you want to collaborate with? This is what we want to build here as a global enterprise. The centroid of the global enterprise and the national enterprise and the regional enterprise is universities. The reason for that is that there's a university almost everywhere in the world. If we can convince these universities that they need to play a role in their environment at the same time as they play a role in a global enterprise, we will realize that we share common problems, we share common solutions, and we can implement them because the data and the connectivity at the local scale is what is really critically missing in moving this as a common platform. We plan to do this by having the NGOs and activists who are very important in implementation and raising the issues, working with the universities, working with major global firms that do implementations of infrastructure, working with the finance industry and the public sector to make this happen. It's a vertical, horizontal thing, but it's going to be driven by discrete projects that we want to demonstrate how to do things. It's not conceptual. So that's the plan, and I hope all of you will join us. I still don't know how to do it, but I've never known how to do anything that I started, and some of those things have worked, others don't work, and we'll see how this works. Today, my hope is that with the distinguished speakers and panelists that we have gathered, we will be able to discuss and learn what the current perspectives are on many of these things. They were given the same mandate, anticipation and innovation. And going forward beyond this, this is seeding the process. My hope is that we will be building this global collaboratory consortium of American universities and a regional consortium that will end up in creating a joint enterprise which may be physically embedded at ASU or elsewhere, but would be a national and international solutions collaboratory that we move forward. And if you guys join us in doing this, we'll succeed. If you don't, we won't succeed. That's it. Thank you.